Hey guys, this is Anon, and today I've got another episode of low tier Lolz with the A-20. It's the tier 4 Russian light tank. This is pretty notorious among Seal Clubbers because it's got a lot of really cool things going for it that make it pretty fantastic for the tier. I want to say I apologize for not having a lot of videos lately. I've been having some pretty big real life things coming up, so it's been keeping me a little bit busy and not necessarily focused on this. I think I'm going to have a few more weeks probably of this going on, maybe not being super consistent, and then hopefully stuff will get back to normal a little bit. It's just one of those things that happens, and going to kind of have to deal with that. But this tank is pretty famous, I think, among Seal Clubbers because of the 6-shell autoloader that it has. It allows it to have fairly fantastic DPM of 1604 once it's maxed out, which is best for tier 4 among mediums and really lets you do some serious damage, but mostly because the shells come out so quickly, it really highlights the whole kind of poke out, do your damage, hide while it reloads, or run away, because this tank is also extremely fast. It's not necessarily going to earn a lot of credits because the penetration values of the standard AP are really bad, so it means you're gonna have to fire a lot of APCR. In fact, I know people that just Seal Club that fire nothing but APCR with this tank, but it's not quite so bad. When you're against tanks of the same tier or lower, a lot of times you can get away with the normal AP and it's not too much of a problem. I still load a fair amount of APCR just for those late game situations or against tricky tier 5 opponents like KV1s that we'll see later in this battle and things like that that really need it. But for the most part, as long as you're on the sides or back, even the most heavily armored tanks you don't have a problem going through. Pretty much most tier 4s are going to struggle with the front of something like a KV1 anyway, so I don't think it's necessarily a huge factor. And this tank is just so quick because of its light capabilities that it really makes up for a lot of those things anyway. You can run away from most tanks in the game. In fact, I think it's really only second to the Lukes in tier 4 lights as far as mobility is concerned, with actually a higher top speed of 65 versus 60. It just doesn't quite have the same power to weight ratio, so it moves around a little bit slower, but it's also not going to get rammed quite as bad either. So it's got just a little bit more weight to kind of protect it from some of those things. So all in all, just a really fun tank to play at the low tiers, and a great way to grind some of those light tank skills if you haven't done it. That's actually a lot of why I run this tank, besides just for the fun of it on occasion, since I don't run a lot of low tier. One of my light tank skills is the only one I haven't finished, just because I never really got around to it. I was kind of busy focused on other things. So now that I hit my personal goal of getting overall damage, average damage up over 2,000 with a little bit of a cushion, I've been going back and playing a little bit of low tier just to try and finish off those crew skills, but nothing too major, just a little bit of clubbing here and there, because we just don't have as many of the high tier light tanks yet, even though there are some of them. So this just seemed like some nice fun Friday gameplay for us, and I pretty much just talked through this whole battle, but I'll commentate a little bit more on the next one as we finish off here. But this is where you can kind of see the finish with the APCR zoomed in as I'm coming up to him, so you can see if you get lucky on the front with the APCR, you might get a little bit of pens, but on the side, you're really going to just kind of tear through it at the back. So KV1s, even though they're big and heavy, aren't necessarily so scary. It's just that you need the APCR, so that's why it puts it more in that Seal Clubber, I think, category than necessarily just one of the best tier 4s, even though it is, because a lot of, I think, newer players that don't understand how to use ammo are going to fire a lot of AP and could bounce against a lot of those heavies. Okay, moving on to one last battle here, just to kind of show how this thing can tear through some enemies. The mastery bar on this tank is usually pretty high because a lot of people really enjoy playing it, and it can just deal so much damage that you need some pretty high damage totals to do. And so if you struggle with that a little bit, don't be, I think, disheartened. It's just a fantastic tank and a lot of fun to play. So here on Temple, my team spread pretty much everywhere, so I have to be a little bit careful, and anytime you're in low tier, that's pretty much good practice anyway. I feel like you can try and stay with your team as much as you want, but calling directions or trying to stay with a group frequently doesn't really work out because people go everywhere. So I wanted to come up here hoping to catch something isolated. Most of the time in low tier, they tend to go down around the river and in the valley. And so when a few get spotted down there, I decide to go ahead and push and see if I can't just check the backside and make sure there's nothing kind of lingering around when I run across the T-46. The T-46 is really another great clubber. It can have the same gun, essentially, that this tank has at a tier lower. It just has a little bit less DPM and poorer dispersion numbers, so you're not going to hit as many of the shots, but it is a massive amount of DPM at that tier, so eventually I should get around to one of those as well. I don't play low tier quite as often, so go ahead and get rid of him pretty quickly. Now I'm just trying to work around kind of the backside, see which tanks I can pick up. When the Covenanter shows up, that's a really dangerous tank as well, so I want to go ahead and focus him a little bit, especially if I can draw his attention away from the rest of my team. Again, my team is so spread out, so if anything shows up, they're going to get focused pretty heavily. And unfortunately, he's able to get a few shots through me. The Covenanter has quite a bit more pen than the A-20 does, so he can sneak a few of those shots in there a little bit better than I can, and he has a little bit better armor too. As you can see, some of those AP shells were showing red, and I was getting a couple bounces in there, but I have 6 versus his 4, so it makes a big difference in there. So again, I can continue kind of working around here, and you can see the low pen numbers again. That Chi-Ha, that's a tier 3 medium tank, medium light, I can't remember actually. But either way, he's got basically no armor and I can't get through it. And I automatically switched to APC on an M3 lead just because I know you need good rolls with the AP to be able to get through the front, and I don't want to risk it. TAD2 comes around, and so I need to focus on that pretty quickly. You can see the great damage right there off the bat. We're able to one-clip that tier 3 tank destroyer, which is pretty fantastic. Not a lot of tanks can, even at low tier, can take out something like that fast, so pretty big. T20, or T40, rather, moving right into, pretty straightforward, get into a circle. I actually moved into him fairly gingerly instead of just kind of ramming the backside of him because it's a lot heavier than the A-20 and I didn't want to accidentally get killed by ramming damage. So that's something you need to be careful of, just in general with lights. Anyway, I feel like I see a lot of players just running crazy in their light tanks and ramming anything they can. And that's just a waste of hit points. I understand in a late game situation or just trying to have fun, I'm certainly not going to discredit anything for that. But in situations like that where it's not the final tank, and in low tier you can't take anything for granted, like you're going to get carried by the rest of your team. A 1 versus 4 is so common in these low tiers that I want to go ahead and conserve and make sure I can pull out the win, because to me personally that's more important than having some glorious ram kill. But again, I understand that everybody's a little bit different, and rams are pretty fantastic. It's one of the most fun things in the game. So real quickly, I had peeked to see what tank was left because I was trying to see where I thought he would be since he hasn't been spotted. So check the AFK running around. Luckily he's AFK, so go ahead and kill that real quick, but to finish it off. So hopefully you enjoy this. The low tier videos are always a little different for me just because it feels weird to commentate something where I feel like you can just run around and shoot, but we all need that relaxation every once in a while, and I needed that personally. So a nice easy video today. More stuff coming, and guys, take care. Thanks a lot.